Hey, this is day 5 of the Karmelo Anthony murder trial against Austin Metcalf, and things are getting interesting. So let's go ahead and get into the video. We already know that this trial is not being videotaped or audio taped, so we have to rely on the people that is there and the eyewitness of these things that is unfolding. So let's get into the video.
Good afternoon. Yeah, day 2 off to a emotional start this morning. We had a first responder as the first witness on the stand. 3 witnesses so far, first responder and 2 officers. The first responder was a firefighter and paramedic that pretty much testified to the severity of the wounds once he arrived to Austin Metcalf's body, and just talked about the intense life-saving efforts they went through trying to revive him, to which, of course, to no avail. But they talked about, attaching a machine to his chest to read a pulse, and he had no pulse. They said it was flatline. There was an acronym he used, a medical term, and the prosecutor asked for, simplicity for the lay people in the gallery, and he just said, yeah, he had no pulse. He was pretty much dead in a cardiac sense. They loaded him up into the back of the ambulance, to which, he eventually did not regain consciousness. But then we went on to see more from officers, and they were testifying about their response to the situation that day. One was a school resource officer. He was actually the one that made contact with Karmelo Anthony and the one who detained him. But he talked about the commotion when he ran out there to the scene, all the kids running to him saying, someone's been stabbed, and they pointed towards Karmelo's direction. And so you see on the body cam when he finally approaches Karmelo, and Karmelo seemed to cooperate. He was being very cooperative. He was being compliant. He didn't try to run away. But the key thing about this testimony here on the body cam, you hear Karmelo say to the officer, he put his hands on me, I told him not to. And when he says that phrase, he clearly he's crying hysterically. You can hear him sobbing in a very emotional state. But the prosecution's harping on that last half of that statement, the I told him not to part, because the prosecution says that's simply a lie. We've heard that phrasing, he told him not to put his hands on me, or put your hands on me and see what happens. That's the narrative that the prosecution's running with, and that eventually led Karmelo to stab Austin Metcalf. But there was another officer whose body cam was played during this officer's testimony, where you heard the officer say, we have the alleged suspect, and then you clearly hear Karmelo say out loud, I'm not alleged, I did it. So
I'm trying to see, did Austin Metcalf brother say, I think Austin Metcalf brother kind of alluded to Karmelo Anthony actually saying what the prosecutor said that's a lie. Karmelo Anthony warned him, don't touch me, don't do this. And the prosecutor saying, oh no, that's a lie. Which the prosecutors will lie and then shape the narrative by the way of the witnesses. You gotta think about it. They're bringing up like first responders and coaches and things like that first. I wonder why they're not starting with the key witnesses that was up under the tent. I know it's gonna get there, but the prosecutor had to set their narrative.
kind of damaging to the defense's case here. But then we just heard from an officer who arrived who did not partake in any life-saving efforts for Austin Metcalf's body. More of scene patrol, scene security is what he was saying, and evidence control. He was the one securing off the scene there, and he actually showed, or we saw pictures of the knife. It was a 5-inch blade. The first time the jury actually saw that knife in person, they did a demonstrative effort in front of this jury where they showed that the blade could be swung out really quick with just the stroke of a thumb. You could open it really quickly with one hand. But the impactful part of that testimony is that we saw the body cam from this officer.
The thing about that, people asking, oh, well, why you had a weapon on him? That knife is legal in Texas. It's something legally that you can have. It wasn't on school premises, but it was at a ISD event. That is it's kind of tricky though, because a firearm, most definitely, you're gonna get in a lot of trouble bringing that on I guess on those type of school premises. But a knife, it is different because you can't cause massive damage to a crowd of people with a knife. Then it's legal. You know what I'm saying? It's a legal knife that you can have, right? That's like saying they have to, I guess, get special permissions to have a knife in the school kitchen. You know what I'm saying? They gonna most definitely take it. I know I didn't been caught with knives and lighters, and they take it from me. You know what I'm saying? In this case, the knife has been used and it took somebody's life. But I'm saying, like, I don't think Carmelo Anthony was trying to actually kill Austin Metcalf, especially when he just struck him one time. That's not murderous intent.
Where you actually see Austin Metcalf's pretty much lifeless body, everyone trying to give him chest compressions, but you see the body on screen, and that obviously brought out a visceral, emotional reaction from the Metcalf family. Plenty of tears and sobbing and consoling. And I looked towards Karmelo Anthony's side, and it was pretty stoic. There was a lack of emotion there, not necessarily in a negative sense, but just really take evidence here, all the facts of this case as the prosecution presents it thus far. That's the latest right now. I'll send it back to you.
Car, thanks to Cody Thomas for that report there in McKinney, Texas. Let's bring in our guests who are standing by to talk about this evidence, this new evidence that the jury has seen inside of that courtroom. We have with us trial attorneys Lateef Gray and Al Wunsch III. Thank you both for being here to talk about this case that has so many people talking online. They are paying attention to the details, even though we don't have cameras inside, but the details that are coming out, everyone has an opinion on them. And I'm glad I can get your legal expertise on these. Al, let me start with you. The jury seeing the knife for the first time today. How important is the weapon, the size of the weapon? Does it matter, especially when this is a knife that obviously was able to kill someone?
No, I mean, it's always a key part of any prosecution case to have the weapon. So when you have the weapon there and you can show that, and it dispels any, false rumors that it was a stake or something that was used for the sporting event that was going on. This is a knife. This is a knife that is a dangerous knife. And this is a knife that should not have been at a sporting event for a high school team. Perfect.
Lateef Gray, weigh in as well about that knife. What did you think about hearing that it's a 5-inch blade, that it was folded out at the point that the officers were able to preserve it? Talk about.
They're trying to make you like it's a fucking knife. It's a regular 5-inch knife. Well, hold on, give me a second. Now, man, I was trying to show y'all what an illegal knife look like, and what you can't carry in public. But let's continue.
About that part of it and whether or not that makes a difference when it comes to this case being self-defense or murder.
Well, I think it does make a difference in the fact that you have a 5-inch switchblade. This is not what we would consider a utility knife, which a lot of people keep with them, that has a little blade, a bottle opener, things like that. So the big question is, what was this young man doing at this track event with this type of knife that it seems like he brought it maybe for his particular purpose? So that's the big question as to what he was doing with this type of knife, which is not what we usually see people walk around with on a daily basis.
Yeah, we keep hearing that question.
They be lying. These let's ask Chat GPT, what is a normal size knife people will walk around with, right? It's just like the length. What is a normal size knife people will walk around with?
Good question. In most places, a folding pocket knife around 2 to 3 inches, so like 5 to 7 centimeters, is pretty common and considered discreet. Of course, it depends on local laws. Some places are more restrictive about blade length or carrying them in public. But generally, that size is a kind of balance, useful but not over the top.
Is 5 inches uncommon?
Yeah, that's definitely on the longer side for a pocket knife that you carry casually. 5 inches would be considered more of a utility size or even a small fixed blade, depending on the handle. Some people do carry them, but it might draw more attention or even raise legal questions in certain areas. So it's worth checking the local regulations.
Okay, so I guess I might be proven wrong real then, but still they saying it's a utility knife, because 3 inches is probably about this size of a blade. You know what I'm saying? 5 inches is about like that. So Does it matter if it was a 2-inch, 3-inch, or 5-inch blade? Does it matter?
Why did he have the knife? Now, there was something that came out today, Al, where on cross-examination, one of the witnesses did confirm that having the knife is not a crime, but they don't mean at the school, obviously, because there is a specific rule for that school ground. Can you help people understand the difference and whether or not those school regulations matter in a court of law, in a murder trial?
Well, I mean, it is something that no weapons are supposed to be brought into the school. Schools have a zero tolerance of any type of, they have a zero tolerance for having a pretend gun. You can't even bring a water pistol in some instances if it looks like a real weapon. So that is a zero tolerance policy. Okay, having the possession of the knife is not a criminal offense in and of itself. That's correct. Okay, but it's a school event. He's a student.
That's full stop. It's not. It wasn't illegal for Karmelo Anthony to have the knife. Policy does not trump law. It just don't. Now, however the prosecution is going to frame that, and however the defense is going to frame that, then it's just up to them. But it's not illegal to have a knife at that particular field event. It's not. It's against policy, but it ain't illegal.
He's there. He's got a knife, 5-inch switchblade, which, I mean, you know, we all agree is not the type of thing you would need under any circumstances at a sporting event. And he used the knife. So, you know, whether or not it's legal to have it, it doesn't matter. Okay, it shouldn't have been there, and it shouldn't have been used, and it shouldn't have taken the life of that, you know, poor 17-year-old kid.
Oh, yeah. This question of whether or not you're allowed to have it and whether or not that matters in a criminal trial reminds me of a case that I was inside of the courtroom for in Florida against Curtis Reeves, who was a retired police officer at a movie theater. There were signs on the movie theater doors that said, "This is a no-weapon zone." He had his weapon. He fired it in self-defense. A jury did acquit him of murder and killed another man who only had popcorn in his hand. But it did come up inside of the courtroom as to whether or not he saw the signs, whether he knew he should have it, or as a retired officer, is he allowed to carry the gun all the time? Lateef, is that, in your opinion, going to be weighing on the minds of the jury about?
They acquitted him for killing somebody that only had popcorn in his hand? He had to be white. 1,000%. What was the name?
In his hand, but there were signs on the movie theater. Curtis Reeves, who was a retired police officer, the case that I was inside of the courtroom for in Florida against Curtis Reeves, who was a retired police officer at a movie theater. There were signs on the movie theater doors that said, "This is a no-weapon zone." He had his weapon. He fired it in self-defense. A jury did acquit him of murder and killed another man who only had popcorn in his hand. But it did come up inside of the courtroom as to whether or not he saw the signs, whether he knew he should have it, or as a retired officer, is he allowed to carry the gun all the time? Lateef, is that, in your opinion, going to be weighing on the minds of the jury about should this knife have been, where was it permitted to have been, or again, does it matter at all because this knife was used in a way that killed someone?
Well, I will say
I'm
this.
sure that's
Okay.
something that,
All right, let me let Lateef weigh in, Al, and then I'll let you react to it.
All right.
I'm sure that's something that the jury will consider, but I think we all know law trumps policy. So if it's not against the law, like I said, it's something that the jury will consider, but I don't think that will carry the day for either side at the end of the day.
Al, what do you think? Law trumps policy?
Yeah, law does trump policy, except that, you know, and let's keep this in mind. This isn't Florida. Okay, that was the most ridiculous verdict I've ever heard in my life that happened with regards to a guy who throws a couple of, you know, assault and buttery, I called it, and he ends up losing his life in a movie theater. All right, this is Texas. I am confident that they're going to be a lot smarter jury, and they're going to be looking at it facts-wise as to what was going on, as opposed to some ridiculous verdict out of Florida.
Let's look at what the school resource officer on the stand today. This was, of course, a big moment. This is someone who would have arrived right after. And here are some of Cody Thomas's notes from inside watching that testimony. This witness, Eduardo Cortez, he was a school resource officer. He described the arrest of Karmelo Anthony. He said an adult pointed out the suspect and said, "That's the guy. I called him towards me. I patted him down. I had him raise his arms and ordered him to walk with me along that fence line. He obeyed me. He didn't try to run away. I turned on my body-worn camera, had him place his hands behind his back, and had him detained."
Why that's so important, because all these media was trying to make it seem like Karmelo Anthony was trying to run away from the crime. No, he ran away and got away from the 4 individuals that surrounded him, including Austin Metcalf and Hunter Metcalf. He got away from that environment after the tussle and the stabbing took place, and he ran towards his coach. He was not trying to run away and escape the crime like people have been trying to make it seem like.
The thing that most shocked me was that a student brought a knife to a track meet, and this witness agrees that that alone was unprecedented. Then on cross-examination, this witness agrees that Karmelo Anthony was emotional, said the knife is under 5 inches, actually not prohibited, it's not illegal, not a crime. So that's what I was mentioning there.
So it was likely a 2 to 3 inch knife and not a 5 inch knife. Why did they say the 5 inch knife? They're trying to make it seem more extreme than what it is. It's already an extreme example, but so it was under 5 inches. Typically, those knives be 2 to 3 inches.
This witness speaking about it that way. But that body camera footage, Lateef, it was played inside of the courtroom today. That is always really important for jurors to see as much as they can. And here, they get to see the body camera not of days later when police catch someone, but right after it happens, this school resource officer is on the scene.
Right, and the body-worn camera presumably captures some spontaneous statements, excited utterances made by Mr. Anthony in the moment of the event while it's still on his mind and heavy on his heart. So oftentimes these body-worn cameras, which capture the aftermath of the incident, are best evidence because they capture things that are said and things that are done before anybody has time to consult with an attorney and develop a defense to what the particular charges are.
Al, what do you think about the weight of that body camera? Because I do want to add some of the notes that we're getting from the courtroom that you can hear on it. A handful of crying students. One child yells out, "That's my best friend, that's my brother," while crying and trying to come at Karmelo Anthony's our understanding of that moment. I mean, there's so much sobbing when it comes to these children and the trauma that they're going through. And you're also hearing that sobbing in the courtroom. And this is something that is very compelling evidence, I would think, for these jurors.
Absolutely. But you know what I didn't hear? They were trying to kill me. I was feared for my life. I had nothing I could do. I had to do this to be able to get out of there because they were going to take my life. They were going to kill me. They were going to beat me to a pulp. I didn't hear any of that. So the self-defense argument starts to kind of fade a little because that's at the moment.
But you see how white people do though? You didn't speak on the fact how they said Karmelo Anthony was crying and hysterical. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gonna speak on that. You gonna say, well, he didn't say he was fearing for his life. A kid crying, not knowing what was happening. You're not gonna say the fact when they gonna point out he asked is he gonna be okay? But this is what they do though. He wants Karmelo Anthony to be in jail. Like every other white folk. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that involuntary manslaughter should be the charge. If they can prove that he acted in an extreme way. You know what I'm saying? Because it's most definitely gonna be self-defense. I don't think it's murder, because I think murder would have just been like he was just out to kill Austin Metcalf, and I do not believe that to be such. But involuntary manslaughter might be an appropriate charge, unless Austin Metcalf, Hunter, and the other 2 guys were ganging up on him or surrounding him, trying to get him up out the tent. Now you can fear for your life. I don't have to say I fear for my life at this particular moment for me to act upon such things. He's biased.
when he's confronted by this officer and has the chance to say, listen, I did this because I had to. If I didn't, I
He
would.
didn't say that. He said he put his hands on. I told him not to put his hands on me, and you know what I'm saying. That's what he said. That's exactly what he said.
Not have been able to get out of that tent. They were trying to beat me up. They were trying to do something to me. They were trying to kill me.
He lying. This motherfucker lying. He did say that. He expressed that.
You don't hear that. So I think that's going to be very important with regards to the prosecution's case. And of course, you hear those other cries going in the background. I mean, that's just an emotional aspect of it. It just shows you just how horrific this crime is.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing. And I mean, I feel terrible for both individuals.
You a damn lie. He don't feel terrible for Karmelo Anthony.
Honestly, I hate to see that this Mr. Anthony has ruined his life with this ridiculousness of bringing on a knife to attract me, and going into the opposite field, the opposing team's domain, and
he had a friend over there. He had a friend in the tent. I ran track. I was damn good, and we visited other teams. You know what I'm saying? I can name you a lot of teams that I visited: North Shore, Klein Collins, Spring. It's a lot of different schools that we got friends at other different schools. We go hang out with them. We go stretch with them. We run against them. We compete against them. They're trying to make it seem like Karmelo Anthony was an uninvited guest in their home and he came to kill Austin Metcalf. That's what white people do, though. They try to inflate our intentions. I hope he get off. I really do. I really hope he beats this, because I really do believe he was defending himself. Now, if they charge him with manslaughter, then that's the charge that he should get. All right? Because you took a life. I don't believe the boy should have died, but I don't believe the boy should have put his hands on Karmelo Anthony either, though. That's the thing that y'all missing. Y'all thinking we just want the nigga to walk free because he black. No, we got a little bit of dialectical thinking, which y'all don't have. But man, stay tuned, man.